In Vietnam, I think we eventually learned that, it was a war we couldn't win.
There was never a time when we were not really under the gun. And we would go by these fire bases and there would be body bags of American soldiers lined up along the road.
When you carry a full load cargo compartment full of KIAs on stretchers in body bags, that's really a sad time. And, it was dangerous, and you just wondered if you were going to make it out of there,
Even though I recognized that I was probably going to die, I wasn't scared of dying.
We more than likely were not going to make it back. And you just do what you got to do, We, as the United States, had signed a Protectorate Agreement with South Vietnam at the end of World War II. And we had promised them that we would defend their freedom. And so the communist regime in North Vietnam began being very prolific, and they started a political campaign to take over the South. And the Army said, "We're sending you there to stop the communist incursion into South Vietnam and protect these people's freedom."
The Women's Corps was the enlisted women who filled in the services. They weren't officers. They could become officers, but we were enlisted. I was the first WAC allowed into the burn unit at Fort Sam Houston. It was a specialized unit that treated burns, and it was very restricted. And I was humbled and honored to be the first WAC allowed to serve.
Our home base was the Philippines, Mactan Island. Your temporary duties were in Vietnam. Like, you would go to Vietnam for 25 days, come back to the Philippines. My job was to take care of the aircraft, and I knew we were doing a lot of good, taking troops in, taking food to them, taking clothing to them, supplies, ammunition. You worked a 12-hour shift from like 6 in the morning, 6 at night, or it was 6 at night to 6 in the morning. You worked every day, no days off. We went to Dong Ha, and a whole platoon got wounded, and we were waiting for them to come out of the jungle. We landed, and we waited on the ground for about 45 minutes, and they were expecting a mortar attack. And I was going to take pictures of the guys, getting on the airplane, but when they arrived, one of them had his left leg blown off, and the other guys had bloody bandages, and they were all wounded, and I just put the camera down, helped them get on board. I'm just lucky that I'm not one of the ones that were in the jungle.
I was on the list to be drafted into the Army, and I didn't want the Army, so I went and joined the Air Force. When the airmen got shot down or lost or missing in action or something, and especially those that got killed, I had to write out the letters and send them back to the parents back home and tell them what happened. And I got all the particulars and sent them as much information as I could. And that was hard. That was hard. One night, they really attacked our base so bad that they destroyed 7 those big transport planes. They destroyed 9 F-4 fighters. They hit 2 barracks. They killed about 80 men, and they injured about 600 men. And it got so bad that they issued us guns, and we went out on the fence and tried to keep them off our perimeter. I was wounded during there. I got shrapnel in my leg and never healed still. I came back home and I couldn't sleep for a month, really. I would jump at everything because we was constantly hearing the mortars in our heads going off and the flashes, and that's why I have trouble going down and seeing fireworks now, because it reminds me of that.
I, like 1/4 finishing college. I had to work my way through college, and so I was drafted in the summer of '66, and I was put in this school called electronic calibration. They wanted draftees to go into school because there was a vast shortage of people with enough math background to be able to do the work. I worked on equipment that was any kind of equipment that dealt with accurate measurements, and it involved most of it involved electronics. Some of it involved physical, such like, you know, if you have an inch, a ruler may say it's an inch. How do you know it's an inch? I can see now that God had a plan, because I learned a lot about how to apply mathematics, not just how to solve equations and things, but how to apply it. And I taught math in high school, 14 or 15 different courses.
In 1968, the Tet Offensive began, and the Tet Offensive basically was when the North Vietnamese came out of the bush. And on one day, at 1 hour, they attacked the whole country and took over a great many of the capitals of the provinces, and assassinated a lot of South Vietnamese leadership, their government leadership, and it took about 2 weeks for the American military to retake those conquered areas.
I enlisted and ended up joining Special Forces. Those are Green Berets. When I got to Vietnam, my primary job was in intelligence gathering. One night in particular, the VC and the North Vietnamese were attacking the camp full force. They were coming not just with mortars, but with a barrage of personnel. The order was given to evacuate the camp. Well, I couldn't leave because I was the intelligence NCO. I was responsible for all that equipment that we used to gather all this intelligence information. It was my job to destroy all of that. But I couldn't do it prematurely, because if something happened and they didn't overtake the camp, then I would have wasted all that equipment. That intelligence that we had gathered would have been lost, would have had to regather it. Right when the VC and the North Vietnamese got to the edge of the perimeter of the camp, we heard helicopters in the distance, and that, in Vietnam, that is the sweetest sound that any of us could ever hear. And the gunships came in waves and drove them back, and we never set those grenades off, and none of the Americans lost their lives that night, none of us. You know, God's arms were around me, and He did take care of me, but not because I deserved it, but I just, you know, I know now, it's just He loved me.
I went out as a driver. I was trained as a driver, but when I got to Vietnam, the largest thing I had ever driven up to that point was a 2.5-ton truck, and they they lined us all up and took our driver's license, and we were gone about an hour and a half, and they came back. I was a tractor-trailer driver at that point, never been in one in my life. After about 3 months of driving tractor-trailers, I saw the Bounty Hunter. Bounty Hunter was a 5-ton flatbed truck. It had a World War II Quad 50 gun turret on the back of it, and a ring mount 50 up front. So we had 5 50 caliber machine guns. It has a 5-man crew. We got to be pretty tight because our lives depended on each other, and our job was to convoy security, and anytime the convoy was attacked, I was the driver, and my job was to drive into the contact. Our job was not to get out. Our job was to get in, stay until we won or we lost. And get the trucks through. That was our job. 22nd of February was, 1969, was a Saturday. And we went out as normal. On that day, they were there in plain sight. They were really after us. And my job was to clear the brush and the bush with my M16. I noticed the quad went silent. Now that, in all of your nightmares, that's like the worst. Our 2 cannoneers had been shot up pretty bad. They were down. I put my 16 down, went over the back rail of the truck. Bullets were whipping by my face and my head, and I yelled at the gunner to get back in the turret, and I'll take care of the guns. I looked back at our cannoneers, and they were bleeding out. I couldn't help them. I couldn't do anything. And I was so angry that I couldn't help them. But I had to keep the quad going, and so I did. The whole thing didn't last more than 5 or 10 minutes. It seemed like an eternity. Huey Cobra came over and began hosing down the area with a minigun. I went back and tried to stop the bleeding on these guys. They were my friends. We did get them the blood stopped and was able to get them medical attention, and they both lived.
I guess the biggest disappointment to me when I got back from Vietnam was the reception that we got from the American people.
And we didn't know at the time what was going on in the United States. We didn't know about the riots. We didn't know about all of the gatherings and the marches. And we didn't know about any of that. All we knew was to do your job and pay attention to what you're doing. If you don't, you're going to die, you know, and a lot of us did.
But it's almost like the people took it out on us, those of us that were there, that it was our fault. And we really didn't start it. We were there because our country asked us to be there. They asked us to do this.
To come back and to be treated like that was hard, And I swore from that time on that if someone served in the service, that I would honor their service when they came back, no matter what reason that they were over there.
I knew that there was a lot of resentment for soldiers and everything, but I thought, I've done nothing to be ashamed of.
Hopefully we can learn something from the past that will help us forge a better future, not just for us, but for the world and certainly for the generations to come.
I hope that we continue to treat our military with the honor that they are due.
I'm Bob Lane, and it was a privilege, a learning experience for me to serve in the Army.
My name is Diana Lee Parshall, and I was in the United States Army Women's Corps.
I'm Joe Edwards, and I served my country in the United States Air Force. I served my country in Vietnam and Korea, and it was truly an honor to serve my country.
My name is Bob Anasterio, and it was my privilege and honor to serve in the United States Air Force and the Air National Guard.
My name is Jim Coward, and I'm very pleased to have served in the United States Army and our country in Vietnam.
I'm Jerry Roney, and it was my honor to have been part of the U.S. Army Special Forces during Vietnam. And if I had it to do over again, I'd do it.